There's four teams you gotta be betting on the money line tonight in Major League Baseball. Who are they? You're gonna find out right here on First Pitch, and we're gonna start off talking how else the Philadelphia Phillies visiting the Los Angeles Angels. The road trip continues, and breaking down that one, we got Drew Martin. It's been 4 games of success here for the Phils. Drew, you think they can take it out west with them?
Dan, I do, but I first I have a question for you. I know you're a Philadelphia guy. Is there a nickname for like people from Philadelphia, like a Floridian if you're from Florida? What are they called from Philadelphia?
I think they would just be called scumbags. Scumbags, Philly scumbags is what we're usually referred to as. Drew.
Okay, well, I'm going to use a term here in terms of the Philadelphia money train Phillies. Dan, your Phillies.
That's a little better.
Yeah, it's a little bit nicer off the tongue, if you will. But straight sweep of the Padres over the weekend. So they're going to take a trip up here, the Pacific Coast Highway up to Anaheim. They've won 4 straight. They're 19-10 on the season. They got Christopher Sanchez on the hill. He's a smooth throwing lefty. I like this guy. Under a 3 ERA, 28-11 strikeout to walk ratio. And so they've gone from Cincinnati to San Diego. They're finishing off this road trip here in Anaheim. I like Philadelphia. Can get them as low as in the overnights, -133. Looks like -1. It's still available if you go to the WagerTalk live odds screen right now. One of the global books has -133. That's what I'm on the Phillies, guys. They've won 11 of their last 13. Bryce Harper, a guy that went on paternity leave, he came back into the lineup. He's been smashing home runs. This lineup is deep. They're going up against Griffin Canning in the Angels. He's their starter tonight. He's a guy that was really good a few years back. His velocity is down. He's not the same pitcher he's been. He has over a 7 ERA on the season. He's given up 30 hits in just 24 innings pitched. So he's been getting smacked around here, and he's going up against a hot Phillies lineup right now. I think this Phillies lineup is going to really get to him, Dan. They've lost 4 straight overall. They've lost 8 of their last 9. They were just outscored by the Minnesota Twins 27-10 in the last 2 games. So they've been getting railed here. And I think that Philadelphia, yes, first 5 might be the better look because the bullpen has given up some runs. But overall, I mean, -133 full game here. It's ride the hot, fade the cold for me. And that hot team is the Phillies. So let's go with the Phils for big game breakdown, Dan.
I'm going to love a Phillies money line play right out of the gate. When I hear you talking about, the Angels potentially getting shelled with how nice the Phils have been hitting, and then I look on the mound for the Phillies and see Christopher Sanchez, who inconsistency, thy name has been Sanchez. I know it ticked up a little bit, but any thoughts on that total? I mean, hearing you break down how you like this game, I don't see how even playing over a key number of 9 couldn't be a potential look in that one. So before we bring in Brian Power and get his thoughts, did the total stand out to you at all, or was it all side for you?
I looked at it, and I would go with the over if you made me bet the total. You do bring up Christopher Sanchez. Gotcha. I like him. But his last start, there was a little bit of worry there. I mean, he only went 3 innings, giving up 5 runs, but only 1 was earned.
True.
So he didn't get the defense behind him. And with Bryce Harper back in the lineup, Philadelphia can kind of change things defensively, and they actually become a better defensive team with him in the lineup. So I think that helps. But there is 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to center field. So it's more of a pitcher's part, particularly at night on the West Coast. But with that wind out, I would go with the over if you need something totals-wise.
Yeah, and it's probably that wind that's blowing out that has something to do with the fact of why this thing ticked up in concert with the guys we got on the mound. Don't worry, Brian, I haven't forgot about you. I know you're here as well, and we want to talk some Nationals and Marlins with you. So we got one money line play out of the way. We're laying it with the Phils on the money line, and that one around, let's call it 130. What do you think about in this one, BP? Are we going with another road team to get it done, or are you back in the home side and the Marlins to give a shout out to Drew, I guess?
Yeah. First off, Dan, I think maybe somebody may have to straighten me out on what exactly a big game breakdown entails. Obviously, it does get much bigger than this matchup to the 2 bottom feeders in the NL East. And look, what I'm about to say, which is to take Miami, is obviously disgusting. But hear me out. It's not all that often you see a team go on the road and sweep a 4-game series. It's even rare for the Washington Nationals to do it. Now, prior to Friday, the series opener, I said on the morning wager, also available here on WagerTalk TV, that the Marlins probably don't deserve to be favored against anybody right now, save for maybe the White Sox or the Rockies, the only two teams in baseball with the worst run differential. And I cashed Washington plus 124 on Saturday. But, Dan, I cannot see Miami losing 4 in a row as favorites. In case you missed it, yesterday they led 7-0 in the second inning, and yes, much to the chagrin of our good friend Drew Martin. Not only did the Marlins lose that game, they weren't even leading after 5 innings. That is, what a terrible beat that is if you played Miami first 5 in that one. But I think it's telling, guys, that the odds makers still open the Marlins minus 160 today on the money line. Now, I would not have taken them at that price. Make no mistake about it. But you look at the WagerTalk odds screen right now, we can get them as low as minus 125. And I say YOLO, Dan, because Trevor Rogers in his last 2 home starts, he's given up just 3 runs, 11-1 strikeout to walk ratio. Washington's Jake Irvin, he got tagged for 6 runs, 12 hits his last time out. It's all about the price. The market has come in hard on the Nationals. I just don't believe they're going to finish off a 4-game sweep on the road. So as putrid and smelly as it may feel, hold your nose and back the Miami Marlins. Drew Martin and those other 10 Marlins fans will be very excited with this one when it's over.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Trevor Rogers, the man is just searching for a win. I don't think he's recorded an official win since April of last year. So, Drew, I mean, you know this Marlins team well, man. Washington making the trip out there. Any thoughts on BP? Maybe kissing ass a little bit and going with the Marlins with you here on the show?
You know, Dan, I agree with his breakdown. I mean, when I saw this last night, I'm like, minus 160 on the fish? Where have we gotten? Is this Alcantara on the hill? Yuri Perez? No, it's Trevor Rogers. I think there's still questions out about the southpaw. At this price, though, I mean, I would go with Miami. I would. I mean, we get him. You can even get him under minus $1.25 here, Dan, but even maybe more. You know, BP talks about, you know, how many Marlins fans. I mean, there's 750 of us, you know, worldwide. And there's a couple more Heat and Panthers fans. If you put $100 on the South Florida special, that being the Panthers money line, the Marlins money line, and plus 10.5 with the Heat, $100 pays back 483. A little South Florida special parlay for tonight. Hey, it might be something to look at.
Hey, the chats love the parlays, man. Speaking of which, shout out to the chat. We got Michael Lester. He's looking at the Yanks, Washington, and Phillies in a money line parlay. So the guys think the parlay buster on that one might be the Nationals. So hop below in the chat and let us know. Maybe a little South Florida parlay from my man Drew Martin Bets. You can check these guys out over at WagerTalk. Shout out to the chat, though. We got Jason in there, Tyler. Tokyo Brandon is in the chat. I don't know what time it might be where he is, but TB is joining us here. Shout out FB coach Professor Chris. All of you guys, whether you're joining us here on YouTube or on Instagram, we appreciate you. And we already have some questions here coming in the chat. Everybody gives me shit for wanting to talk about the Phillies every show, but the chat every show, Drew, brings up Milwaukee and trying to talk me into betting Milwaukee. They're taking on Tampa Bay today. Short price for them. It's looking like Circus hanging at 109. So essentially a pick'em price in this one. Total sitting painted at 8.5. They always want me to bet the Brewers. Is this the day to do it? What do you think, Drew?
Dan, you know, Pepio on the hill with the Rays. That's probably the side I would go with. I haven't seen Wilson pitch too much. To tell you the truth, Dan, this is one I didn't spend a lot of time on with a pretty full Monday card. So I'm sorry I don't have something better for you in this one.
Hey, all good. If you want Drew breaking down every single game, you can check out the Daily Diamond here. Check out the links below in the description here and check out all the content we got at WagerTalk. Speaking of which, the Morning Wager, which you can catch with Brian Power. Did you look at all on that Milwaukee game? We'll talk Detroit here coming up next because some folks want to talk about that Tigers game, but as they're taking on St. Louis. But any thoughts for you in that one, BP? We have to satiate the appetite of the chat who makes us talk about the Brewers every show.
Look, I think a question we need to ask ourselves, guys, is are the Tampa Bay Rays bad? Here are the list of teams in the American League with the worst run differential right now. White Sox, A's, Angels. That is it. It's just not been a good start. I mean, I think you have to ask yourself two things. Pepio is a difference maker here. I like him. He's got a sub-1 whip, obviously, in 5 starts. But Milwaukee is much better than expected, and they have a massive, and I do mean, massive edge of the bullpen. I know the Brewers' bullpen numbers at home have not been particularly good, but over the long haul, I expect the Brewers to have a much better bullpen than the Rays. The Rays, man, they were a popular pick over 84.5, Dan. That looked too good to be true. 84.5 wins, that is. And maybe it was too good to be true because in this division where obviously the Yankees and Orioles are really good and the Red Sox are better than expected and the Blue Jays are a good team, somebody's got to finish last. And right now, I just think the Rays aren't very good. Let's not bury the lead here. They were just swept by the White Sox over the weekend. That can't happen. You can't get swept by the White Sox. I mean, I guess it can happen. It did. But you ought to be absolutely embarrassed with yourselves. I mean, I'm not running to back a team that was just swept by the Chicago White Sox. And you know me, for crying out loud, I just told people to bet the Miami Marlins as a favorite. I don't want to bet a team that's got swept by the White Sox. No, thank you.
But we're also talking about the ultimate embarrassment. Milwaukee just gave up like 400 runs at home. I know it was to the Yankees, but like they're going off getting absolutely shelled. So I don't know. A lot of the time people will hop in the chat and they'll say like bounce back spot. I mean, if you're trying to make a case for either of these guys bounce back spots, both of them kind of got pretty rocked and embarrassed over the weekend. You know what I mean, guys?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
absolutely, Dan.
All right, guys, let's swing it on here to the Detroit side. Folks are saying they already bet the money line in this one. Essentially a pick-em price. We're seeing some discounts on either side if you want to shop around in the market. Obviously, it's St. Louis and Detroit opposing each other. So, Drew, I'm going to swing it back to you for this one. Some folks already said they've bet Detroit money line. You can talk them off of it, maybe hedge out of it, or is that the side for you?
No, I like this Detroit Tigers team. I really do, Dan. They're plus money on the season, up 4 units if you've just been betting them blindly. And they've won 5 of their last 7. I would just, a lot of people say like bounce back or, a zigzag theory in MLB. Mm-hmm. I don't really subscribe to that, Dan. I like ride the hot and fade the cold in baseball. It's just one of those sports where, sometimes if you remember, all of us, if you were born in the United States of America, you've likely played T-ball, you then played Little League. Sometimes that baseball looks like a golf ball. Sometimes it looks like a grapefruit. And when you're hitting it, when a lineup's hot, I like to ride that. And Detroit's playing really good baseball right now. So it would be Tigers or pass for me in this one.
BP, I want to swing it to this Reds game. Professor Chris in the chat dropping some stats for why he likes not only the Reds on the money line, but the Reds laying it on the run line. So any thoughts in that one for you as a team that my Phils were seeing rather recently?
Yeah, the Reds are the right side in this one. The Padres, they just have not recovered from that absolute meltdown they had Thursday afternoon in Colorado. They blew, I believe it was a 5-run lead in the bottom of the 8th to the Rockies. Then what happens? They go out and get swept over the weekend at home by your Philadelphia Phillies. Dan, I gave out a free play on the Padres team total yesterday, over 4.5, which hit. But, they didn't do much against Suarez and Nola the 2 days before. And Nick Lodolo, the starter for the Reds here, guys, has pitched very, very well. 3 runs or less he has allowed in each of his 3 starts this year, 5 consecutive starts going back to last year. 20 strikeouts, only 4 walks, just 4 runs total in those 3. So Nick Lodolo and the Reds, that is how I would look. As far as the run line, I'd be careful. San Diego loses a lot of 1-run games. So,
true.
Obviously you want to be scared about that in San Diego. But right now, Drew just talked about it. ride the hot, fade the cold. San Diego's a cold team, and they're an unlucky baseball team for that matter, too. You go back to last year, just a terrible record in extra innings, terrible record in those one-run games. So, yeah, the Reds are the right side here. I'm surprised they're so cheap, even though I know they're on the road, but they should be favored by more.
Yeah, I mean, Drew, in that one, it really has to come down to, does Cincinnati back up Lodolo? Can they give him some run support in this one? I know our man Tyler in the chat, that was his question, is do we see that here tonight? So could Cincinnati team total potentially over be worth a look, or is that just, hey, it's more fodder?
I mean, I'm with you. I think that is the question. That's why we can get the Reds here near the pick'em price tag. I mean, it's pretty much minus 105 on each side. I back what BP said about Lodolo, another smooth throwing lefty here, former first rounder in 2019 out of TCU. The former Horned Frog, just a 2.1 ERA. He's a lefty that will throw 96 miles per hour. He gets respect out of the betting markets. His last 3 starts, a 20-4 strikeout to walk ratio. He threw 98 pitches his last time out, but he has full 5 days of rest. So I think we're going to get a really good start out of Lodolo. And talking about the San Diego side, I mean, they're cold, losing 4 straight. They're just 2-8 their last 10. They're fade city for me, and this guy Waldron on the hill, I don't know too much about him, but he's an 18th round selection by Cleveland in 2019. His numbers are okay in MLB. I don't think it's gonna keep going this way though, Dan, because when it's like kind of a young guy, doesn't have a lot of MLB experience, I like to go back and look at his AA, AAA numbers, how he kind of progressed through the farm system, and he had like a 7 and an 8 ERA. He also had 8 walks in his last 15 innings. So if he's given free passes here to Cincinnati, I think they're going to get some traffic on the base path. Overall, no, I think Cincinnati's the side. I'm kind of a money line grinder when it comes to MLB, guys. So I stick to the money line a lot. I do bet totals, but overall, no, I think Cincinnati. I think this number's short. I like the Reds.
Hop below in the comments. Keep those questions coming in. If you're watching us on the rewatch, let us know what your best bets are for today. You got any player props? You got any parlays you're tossing in? Hop below in the comments. We'll be chatting about those and circling back in the comments below. And while you're here, give us a like. We would greatly appreciate it. These two gentlemen right here, you can check them out over at WagerTalk.com. It's the final day to get 4 days of all access for the price of 3. You can find out more about that at wt.buzz/deals. You'll also see on that page, it's the last day to lock these guys in throughout prospective playoffs. If you like NBA, if you like NHL, obviously you can check out your favorite capper in the hockey side of things, but you can lock them in through the playoffs all the way through the NFL preseason. That's right. It's never too early to talk some football. That's just under $5.05 a day. You can check out details over at wt.buzz/deals. I want to circle back to something with you, BP, because you were talking about it just can't happen when you get swept by the Chicago White Sox. I'm sure it was a great weekend for our friend Adam Trigger, who always wants to bet on the Chicago White Sox. Yes. So I'm sure he was just making money hand over fist. But our man in the chat, FB Coach, he says, I'm on Minnesota tonight because the Chicago White Sox had a sweep over the weekend. So for him, it's not ride the hot hand. It's like they used up their wins that they'll have for a month. What do you think about Chicago? Coming back home, taking on Minnesota. It's quite the price you got to pay to back the road favorites. So the market not quite buying the Chicago White Sox emergence. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, and the Twins are red hot, right, Dan? They've won 7 in a row.
True.
But Trig's not here, so I'll just stand in for him. I would not fade the White Sox here at this price. I wouldn't lay it with the Twins. I'm going to tell you why. Crochet has been bad his last 2 starts, and one of those was against these Twins. Also, your Phillies hit 3 home runs off of them in 3 innings a couple starts ago. But I think Crochet could keep the White Sox. I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear what Drew has to say. I don't really like taking a road team, especially the Twins. Yes, they're hot. They've won 7 in a row, and we've just talked about, okay, you want to ride the hot teams, fade the cold teams. But the Twins were not doing all that great before this current win streak. So I'd be a little leery about playing them at this price on the road, even though the opponent is the White Sox. And who knows, maybe the White Sox have a little bit of confidence in them here after the aforementioned sweep of the Rays. If anything, I might actually take White Sox plus half a run in the first 5, as insane as that sounds. I think Crochet can figure it out in his second time seeing the Twins, and at least keep this team close for the first 5. I want no part of the White Sox bullpen, obviously. So first 5 on the White Sox is the only way I would actually play this. First
Drew, Professor Chris. Gotcha. Professor Chris, he thinks that this number, according to what he's looking at, should be more like minus 200. He's saying, forget it. I'm going to lay the run line with the roadside in this one. Any thoughts on this matchup here with the Twins? Chat's absolutely in love with the Twins. It can't be that easy, can it, Drew?
I don't think it can be that easy, Dan. I mean, it comes back to, ride the hot, fade the cold. But the White Sox, off the sweep. I mean, Minnesota's been playing good baseball as well. A little something on Crochet here. He's a 24-year-old former first rounder in 2020 out of Tennessee. And he's another guy coming from the left side, throwing 96, 97 miles per hour. And when you look at his numbers, BP hit on it a little bit. He's gotten rocked, he's gotten rocked the last 2 times out against the Phillies and the Twins. So he's faced kind of 2 hot lineups. Against the Phillies and the Twins. So facing the Twins on back-to-back here, that usually favors the offense. I like this guy, Crochet, so I'm kind of looking to bet on him. But the back-to-back against the team that just kind of knocked him around. Man, this is a tough one. I like Crochet. I'm looking to bet on him, but at the same time, I think Minnesota gets to him. So maybe back it off one start, and I think it might be onto something. Maybe the Twins are the side now that I'm talking about it.
Sports TA, shout out to you over in the chat on the YouTube Shorts feed. He says, Twins fan here, don't bet the Twins. So that's all the info you need. He says LA to Chicago overnight. LA to Chicago flight. Be careful. Twins fans here. Ryan has the ability to give up some big home run numbers. So hey, you can't say that you weren't warned by the teacher's assistant. That's Sports TA. I'm assuming that's what it stands for, or it's Sportsta, and it should be an Instagram handle over on Insta. But that's the warning, at least from the Twins fan there for you guys. We got Raven Ron in the chat. Shout out to him. I'm shocked he didn't hop in and say right away, hey, let me get the Orioles on the money line. That's usually a set it and forget it from our man holding things down in Baltimore. But Baltimore, the home side in that one. Don't worry, folks. We do have best bets coming up here. We just want to rip a couple more of these games before these guys give us their favorite plays on the card, tell you about what they got locked and loaded. But the Yankees are still scoring runs, Drew. I mean, it's just ripping and ripping and ripping with what they did over the weekend. I heard you on WagerTalk today earlier talking about this game. So rehash, Raven Ron says the only way to play this one over the 9. I know you're a side guy, so what do you think about the side?
I like the Yankees here, Dan. I got them at plus 120 in the overnights. It's come down a little bit, but Schmidt on the hill. And this Yankees lineup has scored 15 runs in each of the last 2 games. So 30 runs total, their last 2. Schmidt has a 3.5 ERA, 29-10 strikeout to walk ratio. And he's up against Rodriguez, who's been good himself, but his last start, not so much. 4 innings, 7 earned runs against the Halos. Overall, I mean, Baltimore has been a great bet for how long now? Since opening day of 2022, they're up over 60 units of profit. So $100 better up over 6,000. But this past weekend, they did lose 2 of 3 to the Oakland Athletics. One is almost a 200 money line favorite, and the other almost a 300 money line favorite. So they lost some units this past weekend. I don't know if they're playing their best baseball right now up against the Bronx Bombers. You kind of touched on it. This lineup, This is tough to get through the Yanks lineup, and they're a top 3 lineup against righties. They get a righty here. I actually like the Yankees here. They've won 2 straight. They're 19-10 overall. I think they go in to Baltimore and come out with the win. So getting the plus price on the Bronx Bombers, I think that's the way to go in this one, Dan.
Looking towards the Bronx Bombers, and as I said, BP, over the 9. You lose the half point. Any thoughts there on the total? Like it almost feels like that one's the low-hanging fruit with how this Yankees offense is coming in. And obviously Baltimore, they can put up runs in bunches as well. So even sitting at that key number, any thoughts on the total for you, BP? I know in your contrarian nature, you're probably going to tell us it's the under. They do
No.
for regression, right? Is that the case?
What I'm going to tell you is these two pitchers, their team start records are combined 9-1. But Drew hit on it a little bit with Rodriguez. He got rocked his last time out. And I'd like to focus on the other starter, Clark Schmidt. I know the Yankees have won all 5 of his starts, but you're talking about a guy who's got a whip of 1.46. So he's not been dominant. I think this is a fair price as far as just to go back to the money line. It's a fair price for the game. I would make Baltimore a small favorite here. If you look to play Baltimore, Raven Ron wants to back his team. Maybe you do it in the first 5 because I think Rodriguez, last start aside, is a better pitcher than Schmidt. But yeah, with the total, I mean, you look at what these two offenses have done. Both are averaging over 5 runs per game. The Yankees are putting up over 6 per game on the road. The O's average about that at Camden Yards. So yeah, if you're looking to play the total, I know in division matchups, there's that sense of familiarity. So there's a tendency to look under, but not in this one. It would be over or pass if you're playing the total.
Yeah, for me in this one, guys, and then we'll talk some best bets. People always love their player props. So there's one that kind of stands out to me. We actually lost some value as it ticked down a full point. It would be Clark Schmidt's outs recorded. If you can find the 16.5 that's rogue that might still be out there, I mean, the under makes a heck of a lot of sense. I still lean that way. I might still bet it at under 15.5. It's as simple as the guy hasn't gone a full 6. So you're messing with a math problem there with the outs recorded. I think around that 5th inning, if things start getting a little bit dicey, you might have a short hook in that one. So Clark Schmidt for the Yankees, not a direct fade of anything the guys have talked about there. Think he might just be having a little bit shorter of a hook. So I wish we were still getting that 16.5 and 15.5. Still might be worth a look for your player prop bettors out there. That's the thoughts for me. Let's talk some best bets, though, here from the gentleman, because with a guy like Drew Martin, who has released 5 MLB 5% this year at WagerTalk.com and is a perfect 5-0, I kind of want to know what the best bet is for him. And Drew, you do have a 5%er up tonight. So tell folks about that and let us know how we're betting this Kansas City Royals game tonight.
Absolutely, Dan. Yeah, actually, it's 5-0 the last 5 MLB 5% picks, guys. The last one was last year in the playoffs. So 4-0 so far this season. So the 5th one coming tonight. Go check it out. Drew Martin, WagerTalk.com. Feel really good about it on the Monday night slate. Max limit coming to you. But for my best bet here on the show, another one that I got down on, the Kansas City Royals, plus 130 in the overnights. Jonathan Boland is the slated starter for the Royals up against Rodriguez and the Blue Jays. I think this number is too high on the Jays. They're just 14-15 this season, and their bats haven't been what we thought coming into the season, Dan. Actually, kind of surprising. They're 11-18 under trenders. That's the Blue Jays. Look, Rodriguez is back-to-back. We talked about it earlier. Back-to-back against the same lineup. And this Kansas City lineup got to him last time. He only lasted 4 innings, giving up 6 hits, 3 earned runs with only 2 strikeouts and 2 walks. He had a 2 whip in that game, meaning for each inning he completed, there was at least 2 runners on base. So, if the bases are kind of that packed again, I really like this Royals side. I think it's almost something wrong team favored, and it's just because it's not a big name for their starter, Jonathan Boland. If you don't know about him, I did a lot of research here. 2nd round pick out of Memphis in 2018. And this is his first start of the season. He's getting called up from AAA Omaha and using some of his minor league metrics, which, yeah, granted, guys, it's a little bit of a tricky handicap stepping up to the show. But one thing that I like with these young kids making their first start is the strikeout to walk ratio is something that tends to be sticky, at least stickier than some other metrics that I've noticed. And he does have a 21-5 strikeout to walk ratio in 21 innings this year in the minor leagues. So we get this Royals team, pretty good plus price here. They're 17-12 on the season. Blue Jays a little bit overpriced. They haven't been playing good baseball, guys. They're just 1-5 their last 6 games. So overall, I think the Royals plus price here, plus $1.25. Let's go with the Royals for our best bet, Dan.
The Royals getting some plus money. Drew loves him some dogs, and you can ride with him with the Kansas City Royals money line. That's the play for our man Drew Martin tonight. Make sure you check out that 5% play. And as I was hearing you talking there with the Kansas City Royals visiting and opposing Toronto, we could do a fade the Prez fandom parlay. We can do a little two-legger. The Bruins get it done with the Maple Leafs tomorrow. So you'll have to have the books hold on your money for 48 hours, but Bruins money line, Kansas City Royals money line, and let's make Prez cry tonight. That will be the fade the Prez fandom parlay. What do you think about that in the chat below, guys? You can let Prez know I was chirping him in the chat on WagerTalk today. Tomorrow, Bryan, best bet for you. You want to go and of course talk a game that features the Chicago White Sox or the Oakland A's. You listed like the worst 4 teams, and you always have a best bet where you want to talk about one of them. It's Oakland and it's Pittsburgh. The season start for Pittsburgh is petered out a little bit, but now they're looking at minus 120 favorites on the road with Falter on the mound. Is he faltering, or is that the side for you?
Heyo. Look, first of all, before we get into the breakdown for this game, just want to bring up to the fine folks watching 4-0 Sunday for yours truly, 8-1 weekend, 21-10 all sports run. I've got a best bet, 4% play in the NBA tonight, as well as 2 MLB plays up on my page that you see right there, wt.buzz/BP. I'm going to give you one of those 2 plays for free right now, and it is the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is another play, Dan, that is largely based on price for me. I think the Pirates looking pretty cheap against an A's team that has been surprisingly competitive relative to expectations. Those expectations were obviously couldn't be lower coming into the year. They're 12-17 so far, yet the run differential column, guys, still 4th worst is Oakland, minus 43. Only the White Sox have scored fewer runs this season. And of course, there is no real home field advantage to speak of in the Coliseum moving forward. So I get that the Pirates have regressed, Dan, which you talked about at the Open. They're 3-7 their last 10 games, but they've got a clear starting pitching edge in this one and are just simply the better team. You mentioned Falter, who's on the mound Monday. 3.33 ERA, 0.89 whip in 5 starts this season, and those numbers are getting better over his last 3 starts. 2.12 ERA, 0.824 whip. In fact, it was a curiously bad first outing against the Marlins of all teams. That's a little scary, but since then, Falter's allowed 2 runs or less, 4 straight times, gone 23 innings, just 12 hits allowed, season high 8 strikeouts last time out, season high 7 innings he went. Gave up just 1 run on 3 hits to the Milwaukee Brewers, a popular team in the chat, as we know. So I would say great start there from Falter. And I think it's a letdown spot tonight for Oakland. They went 4-3 on the just completed road trip against the Yankees and Orioles. I don't think anybody saw that coming. But yesterday, they were dead to rights against Baltimore. They scored 2 off Kimbrel in the 9th. That was the first time in 10 games that Oakland topped 3 runs. So I'm not expecting a lot of runs from the home side here. Again, no semblance of home field advantage for the A's. No one goes to these games. And then making things worse, Joe Boyle on the mound for Oakland, 7.06 ERA, 1.808 whip this season. Only went 3 innings his last time out. He's walked 8 in his last 9 innings pitched. Show best bet, Pittsburgh Pirates. Too short of a favorite, in my opinion.
Pirates are too short. Kansas City is too long. That's the best bets for these guys right here. Make sure you check them out at WagerTalk.com. Before we shut it down, guys, I don't know if you have dabbled much on DraftKings. They're offering this promo. The chat talks about it every single day, where it's the up by 2 promo. So it's not that you have to, start off up to nothing. It's just if at any point during the game your team has a 2-run lead, you automatically cash your bet. So for me, as I'm looking at that, I heard Drew talking about the Yankees. That's a team that could potentially rip some long balls with guys on base and get a 2-run lead at some point during that game. I think about the Dodgers, who are a big favorite against Arizona with a high total in that game. That could be a team that gets a 2-run lead. Drew, you ever think much about any of those promos? I think DraftKings, that's one of the few times when it has a promotion that actually makes sense and could actually make you some money, net you some money. A lot of the times it's just like, hey, bet this insane whatever, and we're going to boost your odds to a crazy price that you're never going to hit anyways. But when it does hit, it feels pretty damn good. Any thoughts on that up by 2 promo? Because those are some teams that maybe stand out to me. A Dodgers play, a Yankees play, anything for you, a team that might be able to get a sizable lead tonight, whether they win or not, is irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, it right off, I didn't know about that. Yeah, it's very intriguing to me. I guess it would come down to like price point, what the hold percentage is for the book. Like, do you know how much they're charging on that? I'm guessing it's not a dime line. But that would be kind of my question back. But to answer what you're asking, I would go with your Phillies, man. I talked about it. Griffin Canning, he has not been good, and this Phillies lineup is hot. So I think they're going to jump all over them. So with that kind of, I guess, special that DK is offering, I would circle the Phillies with that.
Yeah, and from my understanding is it's just you're betting the price in the market. So let's say if you want to bet the Dodgers, you would be laying, what are we looking at, like minus 130? And if at any time the Dodgers went up in that game, you would cash your 130 play. So there's no extra plus money. There's no other incentive other than it protects your bet if this team goes up by 2 runs. If you're saying, hey, you want to talk people into betting my Phillies, makes sense. For the Dodgers, it just makes sense looking at that total. BP, for you think anybody might get a sizable lead at some point here tonight, or is this just a fun talking point? Because I think the promotion does make sense. You know what I mean? So I understand why people like betting, and every day folks like talking about it.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously a little biased towards my best bet on the Pirates, but another game that we have not looked at, Cubs-Mets. This is a horrific spot for the Cubs. They're off a really heartbreaking loss Sunday night in Boston. They were down 4-0. They rally to tie it up 4-4, lose in the bottom of the 9th. Now they travel. We talked about travel earlier in the show. Off the Sunday night loss, they travel, not a long travel to New York, but the Mets, they've got a little bit of momentum, right? They avoided the sweep yesterday against St. Louis. Severino, he has not been bad in his last 4 starts. Actually, he's been quite good. He's allowed just 7 runs total in those 4 starts. And while it was a 1-run loss for the Cubs yesterday, they were down 4 at one point, and they were also down 17 on Saturday to the Red Sox. So that would cash. And you only need to be down 2 for this promo to hit. So considering they were down 17, I would say that's an easy winner. I think it's a horrific spot for the Cubs. Typically I know people, consistently here on WagerTalk TV talk about that teams that travel off the Sunday night game. It's a bad spot. I think the Mets roll in this game, and the market certainly agrees with me in that one. We've seen the Mets get way up since the morning line.
If you're joining us here on Twitter or on Instagram, make sure you hit that follow button. If you're here on YouTube, hit a like on the way out for these guys. I mean, we covered 3/4 of the board here in under 40 minutes live on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. If you're watching us on the rewatch, make sure you hit that like button as well. It doesn't even take a second, and we greatly appreciate it. Shout out to everyone joining us in the chat. Seth S., Sports, the FB coach, even TB joining us in there. Professor Chris, AOD, liking the Fade the Prez parlay that we were breaking down, going against the Toronto sides. Hop below in the comments and let us know some of your favorite plays. Big thanks to Drew Martin and Bryan Power joining us here today. It's Kansas City at the plus money price. That's the best bet for Drew. You can get his 5% rocking over at his page, wt.buzz/DM. And for Bryan Power, he's going with Pittsburgh on the money line against the Oakland A's. Check out his plays locked and loaded on a 21-10 run, wt.buzz/BL. That's going to do it for us. We appreciate you. Hey, you don't have to go far. You can click the video on your screen right now if you want to continue getting all the info you need to cash in all the sports you love. That's what we do here at Wager Talk. Best of luck, everyone. We'll see you next time.